The disappearance of Sarah Matthews, a small-town nurse's vanishing. It was a crisp autumn evening in the sleepy town of Redwood Falls, nestled in a quiet corner of the Midwest. The leaves had begun to turn, casting the town in hues of amber and gold, a picturesque setting for a close-knit community where everyone knew each other's name. But on the evening of October 12, 2017, a shadow fell over the town, one that would leave a permanent scar on its residents. Sarah Matthews, a beloved nurse at the local clinic, had always been the epitome of kindness and care. She had lived in Redwood Falls her entire life, known for her warm smile, gentle touch, and unwavering dedication to her patients. To her neighbors, she was more than just a nurse. She was a friend, a confidant, a pillar of the town. That evening, Sarah had worked a late shift at the clinic, finishing up around 10 p.m. She called her mother, telling her she was on her way home. It was a short, routine call, nothing out of the ordinary. Sarah lived alone in a modest home just a few miles from the clinic, a small, two-story house with a red door and a perfectly manicured front lawn. But when her mother called her later that night to check in, there was no answer. No texts, no calls, no sign of life. The following morning, Sarah's car was found parked in front of her house. The front door was unlocked. Inside, her phone sat on the kitchen counter, and her purse was placed neatly on the living room couch. It was as if Sarah had vanished into thin air. The initial suspicion from investigators was that Sarah had become a victim of a random act of violence. The town was shaken, the thought of a violent criminal lurking so close to home sending chills through the tight-knit community. They canvassed the area, interviewed friends, neighbors, and even checked the security footage from nearby cameras. But no one had seen anything unusual. No one had heard anything that night. As days turned into weeks, the investigation stalled. The police scoured the town and surrounding woods, but there were no signs of a struggle, no evidence of foul play, at least not at first. They had nothing to go on except a disappearance that seemed too sudden, too complete. And yet, something didn't sit right. Detective Emily Harris was assigned to the case, a seasoned investigator who had handled missing person cases in the past, but nothing like this. She quickly realized that something wasn't adding up. The more she dug into Sarah's life, the more layers of complexity began to emerge, each revealing something darker than the small-town nurse everyone thought they knew. Sarah had been close with many people in the town, but as Emily dug deeper, she found that Sarah had recently started seeing someone, a man named Lucas Drayton, a local mechanic who had only moved to Redwood Falls a few months earlier. At first, he seemed like an ideal match, a hardworking, quiet man who had quickly integrated into the town. But Emily found something troubling in the background of their relationship. Lucas had a criminal record, a history of domestic violence charges, though nothing that had ever stuck. What struck Emily as particularly odd was that Lucas hadn't been forthcoming with information about his relationship with Sarah. He had initially cooperated with the investigation, but as Emily pressed him for details about their last encounter, he grew evasive. His alibi was shaky, and his story kept changing. He claimed to have been at home the night Sarah disappeared, but neighbors reported hearing a car leave his house late that evening, just hours after Sarah's shift had ended. Emily's instincts told her there was more to this than a random act of violence. She needed to know everything about Lucas and Sarah. What she uncovered sent a shockwave through the investigation. Sarah had been keeping secrets. Beneath the picture-perfect exterior, Sarah had been struggling with her own demons. Unbeknownst to her family and friends, Sarah had been in a tumultuous relationship with Lucas, one that had become increasingly controlling. She had tried to break things off with him just weeks before her disappearance, but Lucas had refused to let go. Emily discovered that Sarah had been planning to leave him. She had even packed a bag, ready to move in with a friend out of state, but she had never gotten the chance. The deeper Emily dug, the more she realized that Sarah's disappearance wasn't random at all. It was a calculated act, one that had been planned for days. Lucas had manipulated Sarah, using his charm to draw her back in, and when she tried to break free, he had become desperate. He couldn't let her go. But what Emily didn't know yet was that the darkest twist of all was still to come. After weeks of painstaking investigation, Emily finally found the breakthrough she needed. Hidden in the back of Lucas's garage, she discovered a small, abandoned shed. Inside, buried beneath a pile of old tools, was Sarah's body. Lucas had lured her to the garage that night under the pretense of reconciliation. But in a fit of rage, he had confronted her about the breakup, and when she had threatened to leave, he snapped. He had attacked her, strangled her in a blind fury, and then hid her body in the shed, pretending she had simply vanished. The small-town nurse, whose disappearance had shocked the entire community, had been taken by someone she trusted. The town's safe haven had been shattered, and in its place, a deep, painful truth had been revealed. Lucas Drayton was arrested and charged with murder, and while the town of Redwood Falls tried to heal, they would never forget the dark secret that had been hidden beneath their quiet streets. Sarah Matthews, the nurse who had cared for so many, had become a victim of the very person who had once promised to care for her. And for the town that had always felt safe, it was a harsh reminder. No one truly knows what lies beneath the surface.